So welcome everyone to our Warwick Alumni Career Journeys webinar with a MSc graduate focus this afternoon. And that's because all our Warwick Economics alumni who are panellists this afternoon are very much global citizens. We've got, we're doing this event in the UK, but we've got a graduate who's working in Australia, in Sierra Leone and in Delhi in India. So it's a highly international event this afternoon. So I'm very, very much pleased that our graduates can join us from all over the globe. It's absolutely fantastic that you're able to do that, and we can sort of see the representation of Warwick Economics alumni throughout the world this afternoon. So as I've mentioned earlier, Alex has now managed to join us on his device, and hopefully his sound will work. Alex, do you just want to come online for a minute to check it works? Okay, and that you can speak on.
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Stephanie?
Yeah, I can do. Thanks very much. So Alex is the Director of Student Engagement, Experience and Progression within the Economics Department, and is an assistant professor within the Economics Department too. And I'm sure that many of you online who are current students and the graduates attending this afternoon will recognise you from coming to your lectures too. So I'm going to run through how this webinar will work. First of all, we're going to be recording it, so please remain off camera unless you're speaking as a panelist, and remain muted throughout. Once our speakers introduce themselves, you can add questions that interest you into the chat, but if I can ask you to wait, panelists, to answer those until we get to the Q&A part of the event, and then Alex and I will sort of look through the chat and see whether there's any themes. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then Alex and I have got a series of questions we'd like to pose to you before we turn to the opportunity for students attending this event this afternoon to ask their questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn first of all to Abiyaya Neopan, who's speaking from Australia, where it's very late at night, and Abiyaya is stoked up on coffee, he was telling me before, to be able to speak this afternoon. And Abiyaya Neopan is a PhD candidate in economics at the Australian National University. So over to you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Like Stephanie said, it is 1 a.m. In Australia, so I apologize if my face looks a bit sleepy and a bit drowsy. So yeah, I am a PhD candidate in economics at the Australian National University here in Canberra, Australia. I mostly research on international economics. I work on both macro and micro issues. At the moment, I am working on exporter survival, particularly using machine learning to predict exporter survival. I'm originally from Nepal, but I have spent some time in India for my undergraduate studies, and of course in the UK at Warwick. And now I'm in Australia. Before I started my PhD, I used to work as a consultant economist at the World Bank back in the Kathmandu office, where I worked primarily on the public finance management side. I also worked at the National Planning Commission right after my time in Warwick, where I was working in the core team that constructed an algorithm to distribute money to subnational governments. I've also worked in several other think tanks in Nepal and worked across diverse sort of topics, from COVID-19 to Nepal's exports to public transportation, among others. So largely, I have experience in public policy with a touch of quantitative research from economics point of view. Talking about my time at Warwick, I did the MSc program. I was part of the 2017 and 18 cohort. And definitely, I had a most incredible time of my life in Warwick. 1 year was amazing. I grew, I made a lot of connections, I made a lot of friends, I made a lot of memories. During my time at Warwick, I stayed at Lakeside flat number 69, room 3. For those of you who are staying in Lakeside and Heron Bank, you would agree that it's one of the best places to stay on campus. So yeah, I think it was an amazing time. Before I hand it over, I also like to mention a few things about the place where I'm staying in Canberra, Australia. Canberra apparently is as you know, is the capital of Australia. And apparently what had happened was Sydney and Melbourne, two powerhouses in Australia, when they made the country, they could not really decide which place to make it the capital, right? So they compromised and literally placed the capital in between Sydney and Melbourne, and then they created a whole city, Canberra, which is now the capital. The second point I'd like to mention about Australia is, as you might be aware, you might have seen videos and heard stories of how many poisonous snakes, poisonous spiders there are in Australia. Well, there are those insects and those animals, dangerous animals. One thing I really admire about the way of life in Australia is that they've sort of found ways to coexist with nature. For example, there's this bird called magpies. It's similar to a crow, which particularly becomes active in November every year during the mating season. So it's so aggressive that, you know, when, particularly for cyclists, when you're cycling, they come and attack you. So what the people here have done is they use helmets with thorns right on top of the helmets. That way they can protect themselves. So this, I think it's a very interesting way of, you know, people respecting nature and coexisting with nature. So here, like, and in Australia, I think this is one of the most amazing things that I found about this country. So yeah. So anyway, I have a very diverse experience in both academia and public policy, and I'd be happy to share more of my experience. If you have any specific questions, please don't hesitate to ask me, and I'll be very happy to share. So yeah, so over to you, Stephanie.
Okay, it was great to hear your passion for both Australia and for your career. It sounds really exciting that you've been able to achieve so much, and I'm sure you'll get some questions later on about the work that you did for the World Bank as well. So any questions you've got, please post them in the chat if you want to hear more about those questions for Abaye later on. But can we now move on to Chinua, who has already sort of had a shifting career in January, which is now reflected on the slides. If you are coming along to hear about PwC Nigeria, you can also hear about her latest work, which is for the Ministry of Finance in Sierra Leone. Okay, so over to Chinua now.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Okay, so my network has been acting a bit funny. I mean, it was working perfectly some minutes ago, but now it's been acting a bit funny. So just let me know at any point if you can't hear me. So I'm Chinua Osuagu, as Stephanie has mentioned, and I like to think of myself as an economist on some days and an accountant on some other days. This is because while I studied economics at the university, hoping to get a job as an economist, I found myself working as an external auditor within the professional services industry back in Nigeria. Yeah, I graduated in 2017 from the University of Warwick, and on completion of my studies, I returned back to Nigeria, my home country, to take up an internship position at PwC Nigeria. So over the past 6 years working at PwC Nigeria, I've had to build my career within the professional services industry. And during this time, I've had the opportunity to perform statutory audits, regulatory and compliance audits for clients within the public and private sector space, especially clients within the energy, oil and gas, and the financial services industry. Just as Stephanie mentioned earlier on as well, I recently had a career pivot from from working as an external auditor in PwC Nigeria, now to working as an economist with the Ministry of Finance here at Sierra Leone. And so I was able to do this or accomplish this by taking up a fellowship opportunity with ODI Global. I recently just resumed at Sierra Leone in January of this year. And yeah, so why this is really exciting for me is because for the longest time, I've wanted to work as a development economist, really. Along the line of working as an external auditor, I realized that, that career route was not for me because while I was performing well on the job, I was doing well. At some point, I got so bored of the work and, I started to look up economics opportunities. And so I landed myself this fellowship opportunity with ODI Global. It's really interesting and exciting for me because then I get to work in a developing country. Sierra Leone is an economy that has, suffered a whole lot in the past few years. They recently just ended a war in the country in 2002. And since that year, the country has been struggling to rebuild from the ruins of the war. So it's really interesting to come here to work and see how I can actually be of much impact to the economy, to the Sierra Leone economy. Again, it also gives me the opportunity to connect my skills and experience as a student studying economics to the professional working environment, which is something I try to get an experience of or get the feel of how to connect the dots, working as an economist and studying as an economist in school. Yeah. While I'm not, or when I'm not working, I enjoy like a nice sit out. I enjoy walking around the beach. I love cooking. I love traveling. And then anything adventure, you're going to find me there, definitely. And something interesting about Sierra Leone is that, they've got a lot of beaches. So it's something that really excited me when I was coming here to know that, I have the opportunity to move around the beach, to take walks around the beach, to run around the beach and the likes. Yeah. So that's a little about me.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Chinwe. It's really exciting. I must say that I didn't know that there were so many beaches in Sierra Leone, so that's something I've learned today. So thanks very much for explaining a little bit about that career transition and the move from accountancy to working more in the development economics space. We're now going to turn to Rishab Mukherjee, who has been working in the professional services area as a tax and policy consultant for EY. And over to you, Rishab, to tell us a little bit more about your career journey since leaving Warwick.
Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great day. Hi to the beautiful panelists out here. And yeah, I mean, as Stephanie mentioned, I'm Rishab. I graduated from Warwick in 21-22. I was a part of the 21-22 batch. And since then, I've been working with EY as a tax and policy consultant. Now, I just completed 2 years at the organization, and I can safely tell you that there's no life better than student life. So these are the days that you'll never get back. And yeah, I mean, currently I'm based out of India, New Delhi, India, which is the capital also. And you must come here for the food. You must come to India for the people, and you must come to India for the beautiful locations in and around the subcontinent. And like I believe it was Chinwe who said, she's a part-time economist and a part-time accountant. I'm a part-time economist and I'm a part-time cook. I'm a part-time dishwasher. I'm a part-time everything that you can think of, because half the time, during the time when I'm not working, I have to do a lot of other chores, not by choice, unfortunately, but by out of compulsion. And that is again something that Warwick taught me because it was my first time away from home. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much about it. I'll keep my introduction as short as possible, and I'm looking forward to, making this conversation a lot more conversational, and I'm open to taking as many questions as you shoot at me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rishab. I'm going to pass over to Alex next, because I believe that you're going to ask the first question before we turn to the questions that the students are asking in the chat. So over to Alex now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephanie. And thank you to all our panelists for being here and giving those great introductions of what they're able to do, what they've been doing with their MSc Economics. So I suppose to relate that to what students are thinking about at the moment and what students are trying to acquire at the moment, could I ask you to maybe talk a little bit about what skills you acquired from your MSc particularly, the academic side of the MSc that you have used in your careers, in the workplace, and maybe anything about the kind of other skills. I think Rishabh sort of said, you know, living as an adult is a kind of a skill that you get used to, and sometimes the things that we're learning are not the things, you know, that as the academics we're trying to teach you, but there are other things you pick up during your experience. So would you be able to talk a little bit about an academic skill and maybe something from the wider experience that's been useful to you? Thank you very much.
So should I go first, if that's okay?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
So on the academic part of it, I believe, I mean, I can speak for myself. During my time at Warwick, I was introduced to the concept of Stata, and Stata as a program, as a software, it has been of great use to me personally. It has taught me a lot of analytical skills that I didn't necessarily have prior to joining Warwick. That's one. And if I were to talk about another significant thing, which is, I'm sure Abhaya would also agree, it's a course. It was an optional course during my time, at least. Was something called Environmental Economics, which is the call of the day, need of the hour, and you know, it introduced me to various facets of policy, because it's such a widely debated and discussed topic globally, and it has got you know, its use on multiple facets in all sorts of organizations, in policies, by governments, by private players, by everything. So it presents a very holistic kind of a course per se, and it introduced me to concepts like carbon trading and all those kind of things, which actually I saw. I mean, it was not something that was taught out of the blue or something that had been just written and spoken about, but that is also something that is happening, in fact, on the ground and in reality. So during my time with the Environment Ministry in India, I could actually correlate and connect to, you know, multiple things that were taught during my time at Warwick, and luckily I had that optional course back then, and to what is actually happening on ground, the COP summits that happen every year, and policy in general. So I mean, if I were to pinpoint it, two things, it would probably be Stata and the entire concept of environmental economics that I was at least introduced to.
Rishabh, thank you very much. That's fascinating. I agree, that's a great module. It's something we're thinking of expanding further in terms of additional programs at Warwick. So it's very interesting to hear you say that has so many applications in the workplace. Could we turn then to Chinwe? Could you tell us maybe something similar about, you know, an academic skill and possibly anything else you learned at Warwick?
Okay, so for me, my academic skills when it comes to economics, I would say it didn't really play much of a role on my, it didn't really play much of a role on my job as an auditor. But I would say some of the skills aside academics that actually played a big role was research and report writing. So why directly you can't really see that impact on the work I did as an auditor? Indirectly, it helped me in, you know, building audit documentations, in being able to, I mean, before you engage a client or before you go into an audit, you have to research about the clients, their industry, their environment, know the different policies that affect them and all. And so that's something that I built while I was at Warwick, because the dissertation we had to work on definitely required me doing like deep research work and all that. So that's something that definitely helped me. In terms of report writing, a lot of audit work we had to do with documentation of, you know, audit findings from the work we did. And so that's something I actually had to work with, or I had to, like, you know, employ. It's a skill I had to employ from my time at Warwick. Another thing I would talk about is the presentation skills. So there were a number of times where we had to do projects in uni as a team or individually, where we had to do proper presentation. So that means actually preparing presentation slides and then coming up to the classroom to talk to people. And this is something that played a very, very big role in my job as an auditor, because there were many times where I had to lead audit engagements and then, you know, prepared presentation slides to actually conduct meetings for clients and all that. And obviously that's something that actually played out for me. So, I mean, for me, those were the key, you know, skills that played a big role in my previous role as an auditor. But in the current role, why it's really interesting for me is because at the moment, I'm going to have to work with data, with e-views, and a lot of all the econometric models, which I actually learned while studying. And it's something that really excites me because then I get to finally see how my academic works plays out, in the current work environment. So it's something I'm actually looking forward to, and yeah, I'm excited about.
Thank you. That's brilliant, Chinwe, and really interesting to hear that, in the audit side of things, what was useful was the dissertation and the research skills, and some of that softer kind of or more general experience that maybe we don't think of when we think, oh, auditors, they use numbers, the economics will be really useful. Actually, some of the other stuff that you're doing when you're studying kind of a high level degree like an MSc Economics actually is what you need. So thank you very much for highlighting that. And I hope the return to Stata and development economics is as much fun as you're thinking that it's going to be at the moment.
I really hope so.
I'm sure it will be in many ways. So if we turn then to Abaya, obviously you've got a more academic slant on your career. So maybe if you could tell the students who are interested in pursuing that, maybe a bit about how you did it and what you took with you, what was useful from the MSc in Warwick going
forward. Yeah. So because I'm in academia, 99% of things that I learned in Warwick is still relevant today, on day-to-day basis. But if I had to pick maybe 3 of the most important skills that I learned, first would definitely be coding skills, right? Like Rishabh mentioned, I think it's a very important skill to have, especially today. The second skill is I think the dissertation module, adds a lot of value for students who want to do a PhD because it gives you a flavor of, what research actually is. And even in terms of admissions, if you have a very good dissertation, I think it adds a lot of value or adds a lot of weight to your overall application package for your PhD. The third thing that I think really has helped me is as part of one of the courses, I think it was macroeconomic, we were asked to do referee reports. So, you look at the journal, you read a journal, you read an article from a journal, and then you sort of criticize or try to improve that particular article. This, I think, really picks your brain in, sort of pushing you to think critically. Right. So I think critical thinking skills is definitely important, not just in academia, but literally everywhere you go. So yeah, I think these are the major takeaways from my Warwick experience.
Thank you very much, Shabaya. That's really good to hear. And I think Stephanie also has some questions to ask you, so I'll hand back to Stephanie.
Yeah. So you've been focusing very much on the sort of skills that you've developed, and it's been really interesting for me to hear that, and particularly what Chin was saying about the softer skills and presenting information to clients, because when I'm doing interviews with students, I often have to emphasize that it is about trying to curate those skills that you've gained during your degree, and even if you haven't got professional experience of working with clients yet, that is very nice to sort of show that ability to convert what you've done in groups to that client side of things. But now what I want to do is take you back to Warwick. At the moment, it's a beautiful campus, it's sunny outside, the daffodils are coming through, and I'm just really interested to hear more about what your best memories of your Warwick experience are. So should we start with Rishabh?
Yes, sure. And you might have noticed that as soon as you mentioned Warwick and about our memories, it brought a big smile on my face. And unfortunately for the crowd here, a lot of my best memories, it's probably not very apt to say on a formal event, maybe on a informal night, because I don't want to get sued now that I'm out of the UK. But yeah, I mean, I think the best thing about Warwick, and I'm sure it's the same with both my other panelists as well, and I believe I'm speaking on behalf of all 3 of us, the best memories are not necessarily the academic ones. It's about the number of people you meet, the friends you make. The best part about Warwick, I would go so far as to say that it is the fact that Warwick is such a cosmopolitan space. You have people from every continent, most countries, diverse set of people, people from varied economic backgrounds, people from varied social backgrounds. So what that does is it exposes us to a wide variety of people, and with that, a wider variety of possibilities. It changes the way one thinks. And that is something that I hold the dearest when someone mentions Warwick to me. I happened to stay at a place called Sherborne. It's flat 20.6, if I remember correctly. And that has some of my best moments of my life. And I had wonderful flatmates from different parts of the world, predominantly Indian, but which is also needed because so that one doesn't feel miss home a little too much. But overall, I think what I miss the most is our hangouts after dinner, or us sitting on a cold wintry night just with the lights off. We are sitting together in the kitchen and singing songs. Someone has the guitar, someone is playing maybe the mouth organ or whatever. And the conversations, the non-judgmental nature of people, because all of us were about 23, 24 at that time. In that transition from being a student to getting into the real world, all of us had similar problems, and it was so lovely just to share your thoughts, your worries, your fears, on multiple occasions, even your insecurities with them, and just those laughters and everything. I mean, that entire, the holistic experience of it's something that I can never ever forget, even when I'm dying.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear that, and it's just so nice that presumably you've been able to stay in touch with all those people that you made friends with as well, and I hope that you've linked in with them all. Yeah. So do you regularly speak to those people that you made friendships with at Warwick?
Yeah, I do. To be honest, I'm not very actively in touch with a lot of my, course mates, though I am good friends with quite a few of them, but maybe not everyone particularly. But
Yeah.
if I were to talk about my flatmates, oh yes, we chat. I mean, we have this WhatsApp group going, and nothing has changed over all these years. It's still the same people, same fun, and yeah, I mean, we are seeing everyone get married one after the other. And so that's a wonderful feeling. It's an unparalleled feeling to to see them all move a step ahead in life, and it's beautiful. I'm very much in touch with all of them, and yeah, that's it.
That's great to hear. What about you, Chinwe?
Okay, so rubbing off from where what Rizba said about Warwick being such an international ground. So for me, I mean, honestly, that diversity of having people from different parts of the world being part of the university was really nice to see, because then I got to learn one or two about other people's culture. Like where I lived off campus, and in my accommodation, we were all from different parts of the world. So there was a Nigerian, there was someone from England, there was someone from Latvia, there was someone from Malaysia. And I remember we had different nights where we would all cook our national food and then sit down together and eat it together and just gist and talk about, things that we had, or things that we had back home that was very different for each of us. Yeah. So it was something that it was one of the memories that I really cherished while at uni. And another memory for me, which would always remain lasting forever, is my last month in Warwick. So for the past 3 years while I was in UK, I never got to experience snow. And the last month before I left UK, it snowed. Like, it was a serious snowfall. And it was so exciting for me because, I mean, I got stories to tell people back home that, oh yeah, I came here, I got to experience the snow and things like that. Yeah, it got me really playing like a child for that period. Well, it snowed, yeah. Even though, I mean, we couldn't go out and do much activities, but it really got me like enjoying the weather for what it was, yeah. And then on other nights, it will be more like the social events that I got to attend with my friends, while we were at school, yeah. So even though, the master's was very intense, we found a way to actually socialize and enjoy ourselves, yeah, regardless.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear that you were able to socialize, because it is something that I hear constantly about how much you have to fit in. So it was really great to hear that you're able to share those cultural experiences with your friends and get to see snow as well, which I love as well, and I don't think we have enough of it in the UK. So over to you, Abaya.
Yeah, like Rishabh and Chinmay said, I think the whole Warwick experience is incomplete without your friends. I think there's a huge sense of camaraderie in the cohort at Warwick. So yeah, my most cherished memories are indeed with my friends. Be it like pulling all-nighters at the library, or going to Terrace Bar and pulling out an all-nighter there. So I think it's the whole experience was very memorable with my friends. One thing that we frequently did was we used to work really hard throughout the week. And on Fridays, the last order at Dirty Duck would be at 8:40. So at 8:30, we would rush to Dirty Duck and make to get the last order on time. So yeah, I think that's like one of the most memorable things that we used to do every other week. So, yeah.
So it's great to hear about all your experiences as a student. And I think it really emphasizes the fact that I'm sure a lot of that material you perhaps used in interviews as well, because very often, employers will ask you about the sort of whether you've got intercultural awareness and do you know about how things work on a global level. So the richness of that experience that you've just described, I'm sure that you've utilized that when you've been doing interviews. So I'm going to move back to Alex, who's got a final question. But if I could really encourage the students on this call this afternoon, I'm sure you've got some burning questions to ask our panelists. If you want to type them now into the chat, then after Alex has asked his final question, we can move to answer some of the ones that you want answering to, because we've got about 20 minutes left at this stage on this call this afternoon. So please do type any questions you've got, whether it's for all the panelists or you want to ask a particular individual a question. That would be fantastic. So back to Alex.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to put you on the spot, alumni, and ask you if you could hand over one piece of advice to our students, what would it be? And I think that would probably be a piece of advice about, I think everyone's mentioned this transition from being a student to having a career and a job and taking that next step. Abaya, maybe you could talk about doing that in an academic context, and then Chinmay and Rishabh, if you could talk a bit about any advice you would give for making that step into the professional world, having done your MSc at Warwick. I think that would be something students would really like to hear about. Thank you.
All right, should I go first? Yes, okay. So yeah, I think one piece of advice that I would give is, so if you want to get into academia, and I think this is also pertinent for industry sort of jobs as well, is to reach out to people even if you don't know them, right? So maybe through LinkedIn or send an email or whatever. Just share your background, share your interests. If they like you, you might come across more opportunities. For example, if you want to do a research, if you want to do a PhD, you can reach out to the professor and then tell them you're interested in this area. Would you be able to, or are you interested to supervise me or something like that? So one piece of advice would be, don't shy away from making connections. So,
thank you. I think that just sounds like such excellent advice, whatever field people are going into. Chinmay, would you care to offer any advice to our current cohort?
Okay, so this advice is mostly for people who basically did not have any work experience prior to, taking up the MSc at Warwick. So I would say is to actually engage in other extracurricular activities. One volunteering. It goes a long way. I remember when I started applying for jobs, because when I did my master's, I didn't have any form of work experience. But when I started applying for jobs, it was one question I kept on getting in the different interviews I attended. oh, what kind of activities did you do while in school? If you were not working or if you didn't work, what kind of activities did you do? And volunteering was something I actually did while at work. And it really, it really spoke for me, because then there were skills and experiences which I built while volunteering that were transferable to the workplace. So I would say, try to engage in extracurricular activities such as volunteering, because they would actually speak for you. People will want to know what kind of things did you embark on while you were, while you were not studying, while you were not doing research. What things did you do as a student? Yeah.
Can I just butt in here, because Chinwe raises a great point, and I've just put into the chat the link to Warwick Volunteers. I don't know whether you volunteered through Warwick Volunteers or separately.
Yeah, it was the Warwick Volunteers.
Right, yeah, because
yeah.
they do one-off projects. So if you sign up to receive their newsletter, you can do something over, say, for example, the Easter holiday, or for a day within the summer term. So it doesn't have to be volunteering on a regular basis. It could be a one-off event. Sorry for butting in there, Alex. You take back over.
No, thanks, Stephanie and Chinwe. I think that's such a good point, remembering what else you get apart from your degree from an experience like Warwick, which you've all talked about, and then remembering that you can use that in an interview, that you would need to use that in an interview, and people are interested in you as a whole human, and there are all these transferable experiences you can get. You make the most of being on campus while you're here. So yeah, thank you for that. That's just a great point. And then last but not least, Rishab, what would you
hi.
suggest?
So Abhaya, he stole my point actually. So I was just trying to make up my mind as to what else to say. But I'll try to, because you guys, the two of you, you had such great points and you covered two very different aspects of that transition. A lot of you on this call and a lot of the people in Warwick pursuing in whatever courses they may be, the main challenge for them at this time, given the geopolitical situation in the world, given the job crunch that's out there, is how to find themselves a job. That's, I think, one burning question in everyone's mind, because the world is so competitive, the number of jobs are so limited and opportunities. So one thing that I observed while at Warwick, and even post that when I interacted with my juniors and stuff, that getting a job is not easy, let's be honest. So there is one aspect which is very, very important in this regard, is persistence. I've seen people make 100, 200, 300, on occasions 700, 800 applications before getting a job. But you know what? Each one of them ended up getting one. So persistence is the key to success. That is my mantra in life. Just keep applying. Do not get disheartened by the rejections. People wake up to 5, 10, 20 rejections every morning. Don't get disheartened. Don't feel dejected. That's my number one thing. And the second, to build on to what Abhaya said, I think the second mantra is to be shameless. You may ask how? Just a lot of us, especially people who are not necessarily from the UK, who are coming from other parts of the world, it might be a bit of a challenge, or one tends to be a little hesitant in reaching out to people, asking them for help. LinkedIn is such a beautiful platform, but it is a platform with a purpose. It is meant for you and people like you, people like me, and people like everybody here, who just if there is a job that you're interested in, or if there is a person you want to emulate, just reach out to them. That's the easiest way, because given today's situation, you won't get jobs without connections. You won't find jobs if without referrals. I mean the referral makes life much easier for all of us. So don't feel ashamed to reach out to people asking for their help. And it is quite possible, it is quite natural that if you're writing 10 cold emails, you'll probably hear back from none. But if you're writing 100 cold emails, you're bound to hear back from 5. So make those 5 count, be persistent, and be shameless. That's all that I have got to say.
Thank you very much, Rishab. I think excellent. And the point about persistence was one, if no one made it, I was going to make it. So thank you for covering that, in recent experience. I think that's, you said it's a case now. I think it has always probably been a case as well, that persistence really is a key and really pays off. So I'll hand back to Stephanie now
Okay.
to.
We've had a couple of questions into the chat. I'm going to start with the one that's been directed at Abiyaya, who Carolina asks, what was your experience like working at the government of Nepal?
Right. Thanks for the question. So I think if I had to compare between working at the private sector or like a think tank and the government, I think the one point that stands out would be that, you know, working for the government, you know that whatever you did is directly implemented to the people. So it's really satisfying, right? On the other hand, for example, several of my reports that I did for a think tank is archived somewhere at the ministry. You know, the minister maybe looked at it once, but that's it. But when you work for the government, then you're actually, you know, solving a public policy problem, and that solution is actually implemented. So, you know, that once it's implemented, and then once you see that, you know, changes happening, I think it's very satisfying. So yeah, I think like working for the government, not just like, I mean, not just Nepal, but any government in public policy, I think you get a sense of satisfaction working for them.
Thanks very much for answering that question. And because we're sort of 10 minutes from the end now, we've got a nice question from Zikora, who is pitching this question at all three of you. So they are asking, did you have any doubts about what career path or field to go into, and how did you fully decide? So should we start with Rishabh?
Sure. Yes, I did. To answer that question bluntly, yes, I was not sure for most part of my academic life, school life, college life. But two things help. One is the process of elimination, because even if we don't know what we want to do, we are always and most certain about what we do not want to do. So if you start narrowing down your prospective field, you're invariably and inevitably left down to one or two options, and it's for you to decide which one you want to pursue. Now, once you've narrowed down, comes the second criteria: is there is always a choice between what your mind says and what your heart says. And I can say this with full confidence and conviction that whenever in such a dilemma, always go by what your heart says, because the heart is never wrong. Yes, there might, I mean, in order to do a lot of, in order to maybe follow your mind, one tends to leave out the true happiness or where the true happiness lies. But do not leave that side of it out just for a few extra bucks, or maybe something that's common, or something that everyone else is doing. I can give you my example. When I post Warwick, I had when I started applying, so I got two job offers. One was from EY, which is the current role I'm in, which was paying, I mean, significantly lesser than my other role at one of the leading banks, leading global banks, which offered me a role as a data analyst. Now, data is not something that is close to my heart, and truth be said, that is not something I'm very good at either. And I couldn't imagine myself sitting on a chair and writing codes and analyzing bulks and bulks of data all day. So I decided to do what my heart said, which was policy. And so, yeah, I mean, that's it. It invariably comes down to what your mind says and what your heart says. And believe you me, just go by what your heart says.
So what you're saying there is something I try to convey to students in their interviews. I also sort of say when I'm doing careers guidance about thinking about playing to your strengths and thinking about what energizes you. And if you can get paid for what you're good at and what energizes you, then that's a win-win. So it's great to hear you talk about that from your personal perspective too. So what about you, Chinwe?
Okay, so yes, for me, I definitely had doubts as to what career path or field I wanted to go to. And this is something I usually tell people that, economics is so beautiful, but one of the things that, annoyed me about economics was the fact that it was just so broad that, you couldn't narrow down exactly where you wanted to be. Sometimes it was a very difficult choice to make. It's unlike accounting where, you study accounting and then you become an accountant, you take the professional exams, you know where your career path is going. But with economics, it's so broad. As an economist, you can work as an accountant, you can work as an auditor, you can work as an economist, you can work as a tax consultant, you can work basically in so many places. And so that's why we tend to have these doubts as to what career path or field we want to go to. For me, how I was able to decide was actually working with the professional services industry. So I started working as a graduate trainee, and I built my career from there. Along the line, I knew that audit was not what I wanted to do. But guess what? I had already built the necessary skills that required me to excel in the professional environment, the leadership skills, the presentation skills, name it. I had already built that while working in the professional services industry. And furthermore, I also went on to actually do the ACCA exams and become a chartered accountant. So with that, I just knew that, okay, my time here is done. I've obtained or gained what I needed to gain from this environment. Now I want to go to what I really studied, which is actually what made me take up that decision of, coming back to becoming a development economics from the fellowship. So yeah, many times we actually don't know what we want to do, but I would say be open-minded. You need to actually be open-minded. That little or that job that you think you wouldn't learn anything from, you'll be surprised how much you actually learn from. You'll be surprised how much growth you will get from that work environment. So be open to, the available jobs. If it's the banking sector, be open to taking up jobs which, has the probability of building yourself, in the career, in the professional environment. Yes.
I would just like to add one small point that when we were asked about choices and the difficulty in making choices, I think what helps is internships, because internships make you actually, it's not a long-term commitment. So you get to live that life in a very, very short duration. And the more number of internships you have, you get access to a variety of options. And that helps you zero in and, as to what career you actually want to follow, what career path you actually want to follow. So internships help you like nothing else.
Now that's very true. I know that it's very, very difficult though to do internships during your master's course because you're meant to be focusing on your dissertation. But one thing that is still open for applications is the Warwick Teamwork Programme, where you can work on a mini consulting project for 4 weeks on a part-time basis from the end of June to the middle of July. So that might be something for students on this call that are thinking, well, how am I going to enhance my profile while still doing my MSc course? That is something that you can have a look at applying for. Now, finally, we come to Abiyaiha, who's going to talk a little bit about how you fully decided to pursue your journey. I know it's not been a straightforward one. You've not gone straight from undergrad to doing a PhD. So maybe can you talk a little bit about that decision-making process along the way?
Yeah, before I do that, I'd just like to say earlier Rishabh said I stole his point. Now he stole my point. Even I did a couple of internships right after bachelor's to get a sense of where I wanted to work. I did one in corporate, and then I went to public policy and think tanks, and that's where I found my interest to be. So even now, my research is directed towards solving policy questions. So I think internship really helped me to clear my give me a good sense of direction. However, that said, I think it's also good to, and in fact pretty beneficial to try different things when you're early on in your career. Like Chinwe said, you have you can learn a lot of things in places that you did not really expect you would really go, maybe banking or whatever. So just keep an open mind and try different experiences, and you'll find your path someday or the other.
Thanks very much for talking a little bit about your experience of getting internships to help along with your decision-making process. So I'm conscious that we've got 3 minutes to go. So at this point in time, I'm going to hand back to Alex to close this event and thank our participants. So over to Alex.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. And thank you to Abiyaya, Chinwe, and Rishab for sharing their experiences with everyone today. I hope you found that very useful. I think they've made excellent series of points across like a wide range of areas, from life at Warwick to what you pick up through that, to how you might use your modules, how you might weave in wider experience and other things that you're doing on the university that are organized activities, that are cultural, that are community focused, whatever it is, the sports or anything that you're doing to make the most of your time here, and all the time building up links and learning how to use those and being willing to do so. I think that was a big theme across everyone's kind of discussion today, was that willingness, whether it's to use your links, to make new links, to use your wider experiences, to use your academic work and your coding skills, and just sort of make the most of opportunities that come along and keeping going and trying to create them. And then, although I think we've probably all found it stressful, making that transition out from an MSc into a professional environment of some sort or other. I don't know anyone actually who's ever found it straight. Well, there are people who find it straightforward, but they're unusual. They're the exception, right? And keep going and keep being open to possibilities that you may not have necessarily thought were there, and you will turn out to have a lot of skills that will allow you to excel, as people have been saying, in a wide variety of environments. So thank you so much for everyone being here today, sharing their experiences and passing on how to make the most of aspects of their degree that you've maybe thought of, and hopefully some new ones as well that you haven't seen, that are strengths that you will find that you do have and can really help you make that transition. So thank you to our speakers today, and thank you to everyone coming and asking questions. That's seems to me been a really good session. So thank you, Stephanie, for organising it.
Yeah, and thanks to Lizana too, because she's put a lot of effort in behind the scenes to get all our alumni here today. So thanks very much to you too.
Thank you, everybody. It was an honor being here. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It was good to actually share my own experiences.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. I'm very glad it's good for you guys as well, because I think you've been a great set of hosts and have passed on some great wisdom to our current students as recent graduates of the program. That's invaluable. So yeah, from them, on my behalf, thank you as well.